that, we'll hear from the government team telling us what they will do, what they need to do to be able to take us to Vision 20 by 30. And for people who may not have heard that before, Vision 20 by 30 is manufacturing contributing 20% to the GDP by 2030. Finally, and most important, Your Excellency, will be to award 10 out of 200 SMEs performed exceptionally well through a program that we've done with GIZ, and our team from GIZ is here. They were taken through capacity building, coaching, farm interventions, access to finance, efficiency, and 10 of them became the best. Some of them displaying their wares out there, and you have liked some of them. So, Your Excellency, without taking much, Kenya is not doing very well from the competitive industrial index by UNIDO. We rank 115 out of 152. May I remind you, Your Excellency, that until your direct intervention, and I know because I was in that team, I was working for IBM then, that your direct intervention brought down or improved the ease of doing business from 136 in 2014-2015 to position 56 in 2019. So the competitive industrial index at 115, we just need to use the same template and the same blessing that you gave us to bring it forward to below 50, perhaps in 4 years. And as I've mentioned, we met with him, and as usual, and I think the conversation you don't want to have today, you don't want us to have today, of lamenting, we lamented a bit, both the private sector and the government. And we said, oh, we are buying from you from Brazil, we are buying aircraft, we also want to sell to you. But you could see he was visibly getting agitated as we were talking and lamenting. And when he stood, he gave us a small example. And he told us, how much does it take you to sell frozen chicken between Nairobi and Jeddah? And he said, here the answer, he said 4 hours to fly from Nairobi to Jeddah. But also he told us, from Sao Paulo to Jeddah is 17 hours. But they were selling chicken products worth $2.5 billion. Today, and maybe for context, as I finish, Brazil exports chicken close to a market, Middle East and Africa, South Africa $100 million, DR Congo $50 million. It is equivalent to all the exports that we do in this country, including tea, coffee, just chicken alone. So that, I think, is one of the conversations that we could have. Without much ado, Your Excellency, may I now invite the chairman of KM Board, Mr. Rajan Shah.
Your Excellencies, sir, invited dignitaries, captains of industry, ladies and gentlemen. Your Excellency, it is a great delight for you to join, to have you join here to celebrate the role of micro, small, and medium enterprises in manufacturing and recognize SMEs who have demonstrated sheer efforts towards growth, resilience, excellence, and innovation. As Kenya Association of Manufacturers, we are cognizant of the role that MSC plays in the growth of this economy. As a result, we continuously hold them up and nurture them to grow their businesses, to take full advantage of new and emerging markets, frontiers, both locally and globally, as you have noticed during our tour around just a while back. Your Excellency, you have time and again spoken about your passion to turn around our economy. At the heart of this is the employment creation to the millions of youth without jobs, food security, and eradication of poverty, amongst others. We would like to assure you our commitment to support your cause, vision, and the plan. The share of manufacturing sector as a percentage of the GDP over the last few years has declined from 9.3% in 2016 to 7.2%, which clearly shows that we are not growing at the same pace as other parts of the economy. And this is what, as a manufacturing fraternity, we wish to turn around and even go beyond what was in the Vision 2030 of achieving 15% of GDP to now achieving 20% by 2030, hence calling this Vision 20 by 30. Your Excellency, with the manufacturing sector, as we desire to grow to 20% by 2030, we shall achieve 1 million extra jobs in this sector. And empirical evidence has shown that for every one manufacturing job, it creates 3 other jobs in other ancillary sectors. We shall also increase our tax base, and we desire by 2030 that manufacturing is 5.2 trillion of the GDP. At the moment, manufacturing contributes nearly 30% towards the tax revenue. And by expanding this clearly shows the potential and opportunities we have towards higher tax revenue coming from this sector. Your Excellency, CAM has outlined 4 key strategic areas of focus towards achieving this Vision 20 by 30. Firstly, global competitiveness. When we speak of the country's competitiveness, we are looking at our ability to sustainably produce goods and services for which there is a market at a price and a quality that the market is willing to pay for. Importantly, we no longer talk about local competitiveness, but global competitiveness, because not only should we be able to sell our products in the domestic markets more competitively than imported products, but also at the same time be able to compete in the export markets globally. For manufacturers to operate effectively and efficiently, they require a business environment that enhances competitiveness. This is through the development of policies and frameworks, sustainable frameworks, to boost industry's production, create sustainable jobs, and increasing investments. Particularly, the sector needs a predictable and reliable regulatory and tax regime. Predictability allows investors to make projections on long-term investment decisions. On the other hand, reliability gives the investment community confidence in the stability of the economic policy regime. The second component is export-led growth. Your Excellency, we have already heard how passionate you are about growing exports of this country. and we are completely aligned with you as a manufacturing fraternity. Manufacturing sector growth will not be achieved by solely relying on domestic markets. This calls for Kenya to leverage on products where we have a comparative advantage to grow our exports. This will enable us to improve our balance of payments and foreign currency reserves and enhance trade with our other EAC partners and the larger continental free trade that we are now about to get into. Global supply chains during COVID have also been disrupted, including the current Ukraine crisis, which has demonstrated the need for our nation to reduce over-dependency on specific markets. Here lies the opportunity for Kenya, among other African countries, to benefit from reshoring and to fully take advantage of existing trade agreements, such as AGOA, EU EPA, amongst many others. Your Excellency, if we just take the opportunity under AGOA for the textile and apparel sector, we export 500 million shillings worth of value of goods to the US. However, the total opportunity is 500 billion. The leather sector equally has a similar opportunities which can be captured. The third component, Your Excellency, is industrialized agriculture. What do we mean by industrializing agriculture? When starting with agriculture, we should have the end in mind, meaning what markets will we serve, at what cost, and at what quality. This is why the linkage between agriculture and industry is very crucial. We have taken a step further to find solutions that would enhance Kenya's food security through increased productivity, as well as adding higher value add for our exports. This productivity, increasing the productivity of crops that impact our food security, will bring down the cost of our basic staples, like our unga, and subsequently lower the cost of living. On the other hand, identifying crops with potential for higher value addition and that have a huge export opportunities will accelerate growth and hedge us against adverse terms of trade shocks. For example, as we just saw, how avocado can be processed and be converted into avocado oil and other extracts, pyrethrum to make into ingredients for insecticides, and cotton to make into fabric. The final, and by far not the least, it's as important, is SME development. SMEs have continued to demonstrate their ingenuity and capacity to meet the country's needs over the years. However, taxation, lack of access to finance, and inadequate capacity building are some of the hindrances that the SME sector has been facing. And this is where, as Kenya Association of Manufacturers, we are very committed to hold hands with our SME sector and to carry them and to grow them into medium-sized and large organizations. Your Excellency, as outlined in your government's plan, out of the 19 million people under the Kenya workforce, only 3 million people are employed in the formal sector, whereas the other 16 million, which are outside the tax base, are primarily in the informal micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. We need to find this is a golden opportunity for the country to grow this sector and to take them to the next level. Your commitments towards growing this sector of the economy is indeed timely and promises to unlock the potential of small businesses to implement the short and medium term. We highly appreciate the Hustler Fund, the 50 billion Hustler Fund that you are going to be launching, and we fully support that, and we hope that that fund can be used to grow this particular SME and MSME sectors. KEM remains committed to supporting manufacturing SME and positioning the industry prominently in the global markets. We will continue to showcase this ingenuity and innovation through forums such as this and the upcoming Kenya Manufacturing Summit and Expo. Your Excellency, it is my humble request and honor to invite you to also come and grace the 5th edition of the CAM Manufacturing Summit and Expo, popularly known as Changamuka Festival, which is going to be hosted at the KICC between the 1st and the 5th of November, where we shall showcase all the products made by local manufacturers, including the SMEs. Finally, Your Excellency, you have challenged us to think differently, and we shall, as manufacturers, look at all the various opportunities which are available to us to grow this, to achieve our Vision 20 by 30. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Thank you, CEO. Your Excellency, sir, the next set of speakers will take us through the journey we will take towards achieving the GDP of 20%. And Your Excellency, the speakers will talk about the opportunities that are available and that will take us there. And with your permission, sir, I will take us now through the next set of speakers, starting with the first speaker. Sorry, Your Excellency, if you just allow me 1 second to... I will now invite the Managing Director of Unga Group, Mr. Choge, to take us through the opportunities available in that sector. And Your Excellency, we have agreed with the speakers. They will keep it brief and focused and detailed. Karibu Bwana Choge.
Your Excellency, Mr. President, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to be here this morning to share some bits of opportunities around industrializing agriculture and also tackle the issue of food security for our country and focus around value addition for our products. So if you look at the screen in front of you, we see that the agricultural sector contributes 22.4% of our GDP and employing over 40% of the populace of Kenya. That's a huge industry and indeed what we call the backbone of the economy of Kenya. However, we still have to import about 17% of our food from abroad. For me, this bestows us with a great opportunity to be able to go out there and close that gap as an industry. And, you know, as manufacturers in the agri sector, fully committed to ensure that we work with the government to ensure this is done. Now, out of the agri-based industry, the manufacturing sector, about half of it is actually agri-based. Goes to speak to what Your Excellency have been talking about, changing the course of agriculture in this country to be able to, you know, propel the economy to the next level. I show you an example. You know, in Kenya, when there is no ugali, there is no food. And maize, I'll show you per capita consumption of maize is about 70 kg per person per annum, which is about 3/4 of a bag. So it's our job to ensure that kila mtu wako na gunia yake. Tumetengenezea mtu gunia yake as a country. Yeah? So, and of course, wheat flour there, you can see about 41 kgs per person. So what do we need to do as a sector, as an industry? If you look at maize growing, and I'm actually from the Rift myself, and it's a bit sad to see that the land is being fragmented day by day, and we need to figure out how we hold on to the large tracts so that we can be able to be more efficient in production. Currently, we produce about 8 bags per acre, but the industry best practice is about 15 bags. So it's us as an industry to partner with the farmers, offer extension services to be able to see that we actually bridge that gap. Talk about rice, 15 bags an acre, when best practice is at 35 bags per acre. And I'd like to thank you, Your Excellency. I saw what you did the other day in Kirinyaga, opening the dam. Those are the kind of initiatives that will partner together with the private sector to ensure that we actually bridge the gap. Once productivity is improved, then we're able to feed our own populace. So if you look, one of the key initiatives, for example, the subsidy on fertilizer, and it's a very welcome initiative, given that where we need to tackle all this is on input, one by one. So we'd like to thank you for that initiative. And, you know, like in the West, say in the US, where they've managed to lock that kind of subsidy over almost in perpetuity, I'd like to request, Mr. President, that this is kept on lock and key, and probably the key thrown away somewhere in oblivion. But if you look, Your Excellency, at the graph on the far side, maize, we still have a gap of about 10% that we still get from our neighboring countries, the Ugandas, the Tanzanias. That can actually be easily covered by us continue partnering with the farmers across the country to be able to improve this productivity. However, the threat still remains the continued fragmentation of the parcels of land, which then kills the productivity and efficiency that we want to achieve. Wheat, on the other hand, is still a big gap. We almost import almost 85, 90%. And we saw what the impact was when Ukraine was invaded. That I've seen the other day, you visiting Ethiopia, and the guys in Ethiopia have done a good job to be able to almost take care of 70% of their wheat usage. So it's up to us to go out there, learn the best practice to be able to cover this gap and to be able to feed our nation. Rice was spoken to. So these are the key commodities when, you know, lack of which tends to make us, you know, go up in arms, say there's no food in Kenya. So that, as an entity, we work together with the government to ensure we cover it fully. I'll move quickly because of time. I talk about value addition, and if you can flip to the next chart, I will probably just take one sector, which is actually a key sector for our economy. I look at tea as a value-added cash crop. This cash crop gives us an exchange earning of about 23% of what we get as a nation. A production of 540,000 tons, 130 billion shillings in terms of revenue. But of this, only 5% is value added. Now, that's a pain. How do we move from a 5% to a 50% as a nation? That's where we get the dollar down to our farmers. Okay? And it's up to us as an industry, as manufacturers, to be able to see that instead of exporting the raw material out there, we actually value add and be able to take it to the market. That in itself just loads $12 extra per kg to the consumer. Thinking about my mother, man, an extra 1,200 bob per kg, you know, it's an extra kid in school and things like that. So that's our determination as an industry to be able to do this. It employs more than 600,000 farmers today. So what do we need to do as a sector to be able to increase this from that paltry 5% to a 50% is a brainstorm that we need to have as an agribusiness sector to be able to close this gap. And we definitely promise to be part of the food security. Now, as I conclude, if you look at the graph on the far side, the production in terms of volume has always been almost consistent. But the key thing here now is, I was reading or discussing some things with some people from Rwanda, and where they beat us, they don't have the volume, but they have the quality, which tends to fetch a higher dollar. So the question now, we shift now from volume, we've got the volume. How do we now fetch even higher dollar through increase in the quality of the tea? So those are the discussions that we'll have as an entity, as a sector, to be able to see that we improve and, you know, add to the GDP of this country. So, Your Excellency, we as a sector, especially in the agri and industrializing the agri sector, are really committed to ensure that we actually achieve the goal of food security as a country and as a people. Thank you very much, and God bless.
Thank you very much, Mr. Choge. Your Excellency, the next speaker will speak on leather and footwear and the opportunities available in that area. The Managing Director, Bata Company Limited, Madam Jedida Thotho. Karibu, Madam.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency the President, Captains of Industry, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I'm here to talk to you about the big pie, the big opportunity in leather. This is around a vision of having the leather manufacturing sector, be a hub for manufacturing excellence by 2030. So let's start with the big picture, right? Because it starts with what is a basic raw material in the construction of a leather shoe. It's really about leather. And leather comes from hide. So on the left chart there, we have some statistics from the Ministry of Livestock around how many cows do we have, how many goats do we have, how many sheep and cattle do we have. So in the leather industry, in terms of footwear, 90% of what we consume is really from cows. So you will notice that this is from 2015, and those numbers obviously have changed, but we had a herd of 17.5 million cows in the country. So let me stop there for a second. How many of you own a cow? Raise your hands. You do, right? So we had 17.5 million cows, but out of that, only 2.6 million hides were produced. Only 2.6 million. That's a 10% conversion. So what happened to the 90%? I understand from the Ministry of Livestock that that number has kind of improved, but 75% of our hide is going to waste. So we stop there for a second. Let's talk about the global market. The leather industry is $100 billion globally. 50% of that is footwear. So let's come closer home to Africa. From an Africa perspective, believe it or not, Africa holds 20% of the entire livestock globally. 20% of livestock in the world is in Africa. That's 1 out of 5. Closer home, you'll not believe this, but Kenya is top 3 in Africa in terms of holding of livestock. This is after Botswana and Ethiopia. Guys, we are number 3 in Africa in terms of livestock production. And when we think about all of us in terms of our intent with the cows that we have at home, it's either for milk or for meat. Nobody thinks about the hide. We do everything that it takes to ensure they have all the nutrients, the salts, the protein, to produce sufficient yield in milk and to produce the best quality meat. But hide is an afterthought. Therein lies the opportunity. Now, let's talk about what's the current state in terms of value addition proposition. So currently, as we speak, in terms of finished goods, as an industry, we only produce 4 million pairs of shoes. Only 4 million pairs of leather shoes. Let's look around the room. 95 of all the men in this room are wearing leather shoes. We have a population of 55 million people. You can do the math about what the proportion of men and women will be, because primarily most of the leather is produced for a couple of different categories. One is for men's dress shoes, men's casual shoes. You have school shoes. We have a population of 16 million school-going kids. And their sizes change every 6 months or every year, depending on how big they are, pre-prep, primary, or secondary. So we have 16 million school-going kids who are only consuming a fraction of the 4 million pairs of shoes that I talked about. From an export perspective, there is zero value addition. If you look at the chart there, in terms of what we export, our revenues are at 15 billion shillings only. And out of that 15 billion, 89% of that is in the form of what we call wet blue. Wet blue is a processed form of raw hide that allows for preservation. So it ensures all the organic matters are removed in order so that it doesn't rot. So when you slaughter a cow, if you leave the hide there, it will rot. So it is processed in a tannery that ensures that it gets to a level of wet blue. So 89% of our exports is in wet blue. From a farmer's perception, a hide is worth 1/8 of the value of the cow. And that's the exports that we are exporting. So when you look at the current value addition proposition, We start with abattoirs and traders. These are the slaughterhouses on all the different places that collect the cows and skin them to collect the hide. This is very labor intensive. The capital intensity comes in tanning. We currently have about 5 major tanners in the country. Only 5 who are able to process the wet blue into finished leather. After that, we have the manufacturing. This is labor intensive. Yeah? The manufacturing of leather has never changed over the many years. It's still very labor intensive, and that's why it's the most durable and the one with the best value proposition. It really involves cutting of the leather, stitching, and then depending on the construction, it will be either DVP technology, DIP technology, or cementing. So, right now, the opportunity that we have sitting with us, besides mopping up all the cows that we have, is to fulfill the local market needs as I've established. But in addition to that, from an export perspective, we have an opportunity to move from the current rose and hides, which is 5% being exported, the wet blue, which is currently at 89%, to increase that value proposition. So majority of what we're exporting is finished leather or finished leather goods. And finished leather goods go beyond footwear. We have belts, we have handbags, we have briefcases, the automotive industry with all the seating, the upholstery industry with all the seating. And we're in a really good proposition because from a competitive perspective, we have the supply. From a global perspective, the current trends are such that when you go to China, North America, South America, the trends are, in terms of the tanneries, they're becoming very stringent in terms of sustainability and the capital investment required to operate a tannery. So they are looking for places like ourselves to come and invest, right? Because we have big pieces of land, the investment is relatively low, we have relatively cheap labor force, so there will be opportunities for investment here to come and set up their tanneries for investment in product that can be sold across the global market, right? So those are serious opportunities. So now just to highlight the opportunities, it's around the animal husbandry. Changing all of our practices so that we are sensitized at a grassroots level that hide is valuable besides the meat and the milk. It will reduce the production cost and wastage, and then improve production processes, machinery, technology, and thereby quality because we'll have investment in the latest technology when it comes to the tanning. Market accessibility. The demand right now, I can tell you as we speak, we do not have capacities in our factories. The supply is an issue. When we go through the drought season, the wet blue, you're living hand to mouth. And then now what has happened? Wet blue has become a hot commodity. Right now, the import duty rate is about 80%. Smuggling is the next best thing. People are smuggling in like you'll never imagine. Catch me if you will, because the demand is there. So we have various trading areas, COMESA, AGOA, AFTA, that we can trade with. The exports will move from 15 billion to about 75 billion. More importantly, from a people perspective, we currently have only 17,000 people in our industry. Based on these simulations, we anticipate, based on that labor intensivity in the additional value addition, we can move to 100,000 people who are employed. And 100,000 people, 70% of these are in the informal sector, not the formal sector, Karioko, Kamukunji, all of these hubs where we have very segmented or fragmented industries. And in addition to that, we'll be able to strengthen the skills because these are skills that require some form of competency in terms of product design, chemical engineering, tannery, leather technology, if you will. So it has a really good value proposition in terms of our young people having employment in an industry that has opportunities. So ladies, and thank you very much. And we hope that you see the opportunity in the leather industry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam. Your Excellency, the next speakers will speak on the opportunities around the pharmaceuticals industry. And allow me, sir, to invite the Managing Director of Cosmos, Mr. Vimal Patel, and Mr. Palum Danani, who is the MD, Universal Farm. Karibuni.
Good morning, Your Excellency. the President, champions of industries, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Today, I'm going to talk about the opportunities in the pharmaceutical industry. COVID taught us a lesson in terms of security. We want to bring the cost of healthcare down so that maximum population of our country can get the right medicine of the right quality and affordable. Together with that, we see an opportunity in Kenya, and we see an opportunity in Africa. We talk about India, we talk about Bangladesh. We want to talk about Kenya in Africa, and we have a wonderful opportunity. I'm going to take you to certain statistics here, and then I will broaden my outlook on the opportunities. So we have an industry of $1.2 billion US dollars. What I'm going to be talking here is in US dollars, not Kenyan shillings. The exports right now is 100 million. Most of it goes to East Africa. And there's a huge Africa down there, sub-Saharan Africa. 70% in quantity is imported from India, China. 60% of this is generic drugs. We have 37 plus manufacturers in Kenya. One of the biggest manufacturing hub in the sub-Saharan Africa, which tells us that we are on the trajectory and we need to make the most of it. We are presently using 50 to 60% of our capacity, which again means that we have the capacities, and the more you produce, the cost of production comes down. And then we can go into vertical integration into raw materials. For every $1 that we invest, we can get back $1.5. There is a 7% growth rate, and to my opinion, that can be even more. What are the key drivers? We need to spend a bit more on the healthcare. I think Kenya's percentage spending in healthcare is pretty low against the target we had set. The life expectancy is increasing. We talk about NCD, which is hypertension, diabetes, all these are increasing. There's increased government support through health pillars. So these are going to drive it. Right now, a lot of public and private institutions are importing drugs. Now, when I talk about importing drugs, there is a patented and there's the generic arm. We're talking about the generic arm. We have a potential to increase this to 240 to $350 million worth of business here, which means that when we see a protection, there are other players who are going to come into this market, which means that we have 3 to 6 factories, number of direct jobs going from 900 to between 900 to 1,800, and then indirect jobs. Finished products cost more than manufacturing, so your outflow of US dollars goes less. The other cost that we don't realize is the substandard and falsified medicines. If this is not controlled, our healthcare costs will go up because of hospitalization. The other thing that was shown by some studies, that locally made medicines was readily available in a short time. When we have pandemics, when we have epidemics, we need medicines very quickly. And during the COVID time, we supplied medicines very, very quickly, and we should be proud of the pharma industry there. I've talked about increasing export. There's a huge market there, and I do believe we can be an India of Africa. Why do we talk about India? Why do we talk about Pakistan? Why do we talk about China? Why don't we talk about Kenya, Kenyan jobs? That's what we are here for. The AUC Pharmaceutical Manufacturing Plan of Africa said that between 30% that is locally made and 70% which is imported, we wanted to change it around. Yeah? The same for the East African Community Manufacturing Plan. We want to change it around. And that's why we're here. What will this mean? Once we get in income, we get more factories, the costs become less because there's competition, there's innovation. This is what we need. The kind of medicines Africa needs is not the type of medicines that Western require. We have our own diseases, we have our own needs, and we need to innovate there. And that will only come through this growth, like India has shown. Thank you very much. I was given 3 minutes, I finished it. Thank you.
Your Excellency, Dr. Ruto, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, captains of industry. Since I've only got 3 minutes, I can talk for days on this topic, but I will use my 3 minutes hopefully So I think as my predecessor or chair of the association has already mentioned, so I will go to a precise one-item example. As a company, we are based in Kenya. We are the only WHO pre-qualified plant in Kenya. In sub-Saharan Africa, there are 2, out of which 1 is in your backyard, sir. That gives us an opportunity to manufacture ARVs, malaria, TB, reproductive health, and the others. But we only manufacture ARVs and TB. Fortunately or unfortunately, this majority of this funding is from donor-funded programs. One item alone, which is an HIV product, which we already have the pre-qualification, the demand for Kenya is a million tablets a day, which is about 365 million tablets a year. We have more than enough capacity to supply the Kenyan market. What our request, and this is one product only I'm talking about, it is approximately worth $60 million in terms of value. It can give you a tax of $3 million a year and a forex retention of not less than $12, $13 million a year. I'm just talking of creation. My life is busy, but we have not considered any other product. So there is malaria, TB, HIV, reproductive health, and let's not forget the bigger animal which is now coming about is the non-communicable diseases, which is the lifestyle. So opportunities, as my predecessor says, I do not want to go into, but a few of the positives, what the government has done is the Buy Kenya, Build Kenya policy, demonstrating to buy from local manufacturers certain products, but not the HIV product, because that comes mainly from the donor-funded programs. And the donors, for example, we lost a tender worth about $40 million for a meager 5% difference. And the whole thing came from India. So you can imagine how many people lost jobs, the revenue the government has lost, including the forex retention. So engagement with donors, Your Excellency, is very, very necessary, because one side they are saying that they want to reduce funding towards more self-sustainability for countries, but capacity is not built. An example again is a good malaria product that today there is no manufacturer on the continent who has built capacity to manufacture a good malaria product acceptable to international standards. We just got our pre-qualification a few months ago, so we are amongst those, but it did not build capacity because everything was imported up to day before yesterday. And now there is no subsidy in that product. So sustainability, Your Excellency, is very necessary through donor engagement. One thing I would say, we have supplied in a record time an ARV product to KEMSA as a local manufacturer. As I said, thanks to the government to support local industry. Not being paid is a different story, which we don't engage on today. But clearly, I think we have a lot to do. And numbers have shown this is, I think, $1.2 billion market is actually there. And just one item can change. And it's a huge opportunity. Thank you. I don't want to dwell too much on it, sir. Thank you.
Your Excellency, to discuss the opportunities around the textile and apparel, I will invite the Managing Director, Bedi Investment, Mr. Jas Bedi. Bwana Bedi, kindly.
Thank you. Good morning, and Your Excellency, I've been told my time is limited, so I will go direct to the point. But before I start, I just want to share a very small story of a small country called Bangladesh. In 2015, Bangladesh was exporting $25 billion of garments and apparel to the world, and they had a plan that by 2025, they want to grow their exports, double it to $50 billion. We're in 2022 today, sir. Last year in 2021, they actually hit their plan of $50 billion 4 years in advance. They have more than 4.2 million jobs today, and their manufacturing contribution in 2015 was 16% of their GDP. Today it is 22% of their GDP. And I'm so happy that KAM is now thinking that they want to go back to their glory of 20% manufacturing contribution by 2030. So it is possible. Bangladesh has done it. Kenya can do it. And to give you a little bit of perspective of manufacturing contribution by other countries, China, 28% of their manufacturing contribution to their GDP. Egypt, in our backyard, 30% of their manufacturing contribution to their GDP. India, 16%, South Africa, 14%, and if Kenya is at 7.2%, over the years it's come down from 20. It's a shame, but it's better to be honorable and accept there is a problem, and let's move on and let's deliver that plan. So, Your Excellency, going back to the textile apparel sector, it's probably one of the biggest supply chains in the world, huge market opportunity. Kenya today is the largest exporter under AGOA to the US. That is our number 3 export. It has overtaken coffee, which is now number 4. It was $500 million, like the chairman said, and it's got 52,000 jobs. But this opportunity ahead of us, just one market, the United States, is $100 billion. If we start looking at European Union, 27 countries, another $150 billion. The total pie is $800 billion. And to me, the only lesson I know from business school is size of the pie, slice of the pie. So if the size of the pie in the US under AGOA is $100 billion, and our contribution of export contribution to that pie is $500 million, there's no need to chest thump and say, oh, we're the biggest, we're the best in Africa. Yes, you are. But globally, what have you done? You're 0.5% of US imports. It's a shame. We are duty-free. Bangladesh is doing much more than they're dutiable. So it's a big shame for us, and there's a serious opportunity for us in one sector. And in that one sector, we have no factories left in our Athi River EPZ, full